My name is Lieutenant Aldo Rain, and I'm putting together a special team, and I need me 8 soldiers. 8 Jewish American soldiers. And once we're in enemy territory, as a bushwhacking guerrilla army, we're going to be doing one thing, and one thing only. Killing Nazis.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where each week we enter the world of a great film. We explore its themes, the history, the filmmaking, and the influence it has on us today. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, my name is John Roca. I am a voiceover artist, performer, and actor here. I thought we'd play around with a German accent. Everyone, this is John Roca. I'm you guys know me. I'm a voiceover artist. I write, produce, and host over at Collider and on the Top 10 show. Boy, this isn't. Steve and I were talking off mic before we started this podcast. This is going to be an interesting one for you all who have listened to us for such a long time. Sit back, relax, pour yourself a nice milk or brandy, and listen to us go through this movie.
Well, this is a weird one because it is now 2019, and as we've done the last couple of years, and maybe we'll do for every year of the Cine-Files is. Yeah. A new year means that we open up a whole new year 10 years ago. So 2009 is open to us. And we sent out a survey and we had 10 movies on the survey. And by far, not even close, the winner was Inglourious Basterds, Quentin Tarantino, with 36% of the vote.
Yeah.
And the next closest one was Watchmen with 12% of the vote.
I would love to tackle Watchmen whenever we get to that.
Well, that's a whole other thing because that is, to me, the opus masterpiece of all comic book literature.
Agreed.
But I've only seen the movie once.
Wow.
I saw it in the theater and that was it.
Okay.
So
I encourage you to see the director's
that's
cut
what I've heard. So I would love to do that.
Yeah.
But this one was, and as I was watching the votes come in, I was kind of nervous because the reality is I don't love this movie.
Oh.
I admire it.
Once again, this is not your movie.
Yeah.
One of Steve's not your movies.
Well, but this one in particular.
Yeah. Okay.
There are other movies that I have problems with this film.
Okay.
Like I have the most problems with this film of any film we've done since Armageddon.
How dare you?
But the reality is, it's a different kind of problems, and we'll kind of go into them through the movie. But with Armageddon, I totally acknowledge that it is a fun, silly romp. I believe that when I was on the Top 10 show, it was in my list.
Yes,
because it is
space movies.
So, but this takes on like heavy, serious issues and handles in ways that make me uncomfortable. And so I have. Well, and I watched the film and I watched it again and I tried to do exactly the same level of research and study and thought that we do for every movie in the Cine-Files. But there are things where I go, that is brilliant, but I don't like how this makes me feel. I am uncomfortable with this film in some ways.
Right.
And looking at, critical response to it, it is a very divisive movie. Some people apparently at least 36% of our fans absolutely love this film.
Right.
And some people don't.
Well, that's what's so great about this show, Steve, is we can talk about it honestly and freely. We're not beholden to any studio or any director or writer or actor or star. We will talk about it openly, and I hope our fans are open-minded to listen to our points of view on it, both good and bad.
And, of course, this is not only the #1 pick for our 2009 films, but it is also a Patreon pick from Clay Williams, who's been helpful for us in all sorts of things.
Yes, thank you, Clay.
And Matt Correa.
Oh, nice.
And
thank
so
you, Matt.
I'd like to hear why you guys picked this film.
What's up, John and Steve? This is Matt from Miami, Florida. Inglourious Basterds is one of my favorite movies of all time. The acting tour de force that you get from Christoph Waltz, the beamed down but yet so powerful Melanie Laurent, and the unforgettable Lieutenant Aldo Rain portrayed by Brad Pitt are just some highlights from the movie that I love so much. But what really gets me to the edge of my seat every time I watch it are the quiet moments in between the bombastic ones. The scenes with Daniel Bruhl and Melanie Laurent when he actually seems likable while also being a vicious killing Nazi. And of course the underground bar scene, need I say more? And when Brad Pitt turns to the camera at the end of the film and says, "I think this might just be my masterpiece," in my opinion, that is Tarantino talking directly to the audience, and I agree with him 100%.
Hey John and Steve, this is Clay once again from Portland, Oregon. Inglourious Basterds is one of my favorite movies of all time. Quentin Tarantino is my favorite director of all time, so this movie has a special place in my heart for obvious reasons. I think there are so many memorable and quotable scenes, and it is one of the best written movies I have ever seen. The way that he builds tension through his dialogue is done so well, and it gives the movie two of its most memorable scenes. The beginning with Christoph Waltz in The Farmer, or in the bar scene with Michael Fassbender. It gives you this exhilarating feeling that I don't think many movies can truly do, where you feel anything could happen in any which way.
Great.
Loved it.
Yeah. Do you remember how you first came to it?
Yeah, definitely in the theater. I think it was with our crew of people, certainly to go see it. Excited to go see it. It's Tarantino back in the mid to late 2000s. 2010s, around that area, when Tarantino was like God. So you went to go see everything he did. I remember being very excited about this. I remember hearing ahead of time, because I didn't see it opening weekend. I know I saw it like a week after, that Christoph Waltz was the thing to see in this movie. Like everybody talked about it. Everybody talked about it. And when you sit there and watch it, I remember coming out of the theater going, this is maybe some of the most incredibly well-written scenes that Tarantino has ever put on film. And yet I was a bit put off by the fantasy aspect of it all.
Well, that's
what happens at the end of the movie.
That's the stuff we're going to get into.
Yeah.
I did not see it in the theater. I somehow missed it, and it was kind of in the era when my movie going in theaters was going down.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening is I watched it sometime after Jax was born, so 2011-ish, and this became my regular, I never saw this in the theater. After everyone's gone to bed, I'll watch it. And I watched it probably in 3 or 4 sittings and late at night. You know, I didn't sit down and watch it all at once.
Wow.
And I had this, like, the opening scene, this is one of the greatest scenes on film.
Absolutely.
And then other scenes, I'm like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. And then another scene, like, wow, this scene is amazing. And would go back and forth of watching it over those several nights, and then really tried to dig into it in the last week and a half of really studying it and trying to get my head around what's happening here.
Yeah.
A little bit of pre-production. I don't have that much. Obviously, this is a movie at the Weinstein Company. We don't need to go into anything more about the Weinsteins. It's kind of been over that a bit. So Tarantino worked on this script for 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And he started it and stopped it and started it and stopped it. And he says that he really, when he finished this script finally, that he felt this was his masterpiece. That this was his, and it was interesting, it's his masterpiece and also an homage to The Dirty Dozen and to spaghetti westerns. You know, but he said this is the movie that, like, really he was most proud of when he finished the script. Of course, the most important person to cast was Brad Pitt, and they had wanted to work together for a while. And one thing I found out, Brad Pitt only books one movie ahead of time. So he's not scheduled 3 movies down the line. So it would just happen to be that when the money came in for Tarantino to do the movie, he happened to be free.
Yeah.
And they went, okay, and let's go forward. They shot the movie really quickly. They tried to shoot it in sequence, which is really interesting.
That is rare, though.
Yeah,
right?
very rare and
Big
difficult.
movies like this, yeah.
And Tarantino, it seems like his style is to shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and then stop. He doesn't want to spread things out. He doesn't want long shoots. He doesn't want to take a lot of time with stuff. He wants to go through it and do it.
That seems to make sense with the way his personality is. We see him in interviews.
Yep. John, would you like to start the film Inglourious Basterds?
Let's do this thing.
Okay. You know what's really weird is that Universal logo comes up, and it's an old Universal logo, but it's not. It's like a 70s, mid-70s Universal logo, which it seems to me that is where Quentin Tarantino is trapped.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like because this is a World War II movie made in 2008, but the logo he chooses is from the 70s.
Yeah, it's when Lily and I were watching it last night before we recorded this podcast for today, and I turned to her after it was over and I said to her, he is perpetually stuck in the 70s. No matter where he sets his movies in time, they are always in the 70s. They always have a 70s vibe to them, and I kind of love that. It's what he does. It's what he knows. What he does best. He knows it really well. People give Guy Ritchie shit for doing those films that are from like, those are like, British gangster films.
Right.
But in essence, the energy Tarantino brings to everything he does, no matter what sets, is 70s.
And it's a particular. It's not the Conversation and Apocalypse Now 70s. It's not Network and it's not that. It's Schlockhaus, blaxploitation, Grindhouse, like that kind of stuff,
but with way more artistry to it.
But a lot of artistry. Well, I think we talked about this when we did Reservoir Dogs. We talked about this when we did Pulp Fiction. Is what he's doing is sort of elevating the platonic ideal of a certain kind of thing.
Yes,
and this is elevating The Dirty Dozen and elevating like the tough fighting. soldier kind of movie in his weird Tarantino way. This movie has chapter headings, and this is chapter 1. It's Once Upon a Time in Nazi-occupied France. It is 1941.
Straightforward.
Well, and this is Sergio Leone.
Yeah.
Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yep.
And the music that's playing, I think, is Morricone.
Yes.
Who he wanted to have be the actual composer on the film, but he was busy on another gig. But he did pull several tracks from Morricone, which is what's in the film. And Tarantino has a great sense of music.
Oh, yeah.
One of the best. We're at a farmhouse. There's a guy chopping some wood. His daughters are, doing laundry and stuff. And we hear some cars pulling up, and he tells the daughters to go, into the house, and up pull the Germans. And out of the German car steps Christoph Waltz.
Yeah.
Colonel Landa. He is amazing in this film. Mm-hmm. And this is the thing. Yes, I have problems with this movie, but my problems with the movie is not the performance of Christoph Waltz.
Yeah,
it is a remarkable, amazing performance.
Mm-hmm.
We can tell right from the moment that the guy who's the dairy farmer sees this guy that something's up.
Yeah. A sense of dread.
Huge sense of dread. And he kind of washes his face, and up walks Colonel Landa, and he is polite and pleasant.
C'est un plaisir de vous rencontrer, Monsieur Lapadite. Je suis le colonel SS Hans Landa.
This is subtitled in, this is French that's been subtitled. Mm-hmm. One of the crazy things about this movie is I think it's only about a third of the film is in English.
Yeah.
The vast majority is subtitled, which made it really, really hard for me.
So, I see.
Just because I'm taking notes, and because I can listen to dialogue and type it into my iPad, but I can't read subtitles and then go back because every time I look down, I miss it. So I can't keep, because normally I would hear the next line of dialogue and keep typing. It was terrible.
Whenever someone comes up to me and goes, I can't watch those foreign films, they have subtitles, I go, did you watch Inglourious Basterds? Oh, I loved it. Case closed.
Yeah. I mean, it is.
It's about subject matter. It's not about subtitles.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Well, or maybe they're just functionally illiterate.
Wow. Okay.
Sorry. Did I sound angry there?
Maybe a little bit.
Look, I had a rough night last night.
You did. But it's perfect for you to review the film.
I've not slept that much. And they go inside the house. There's some introductions, and he graciously kisses one of the daughter's hands and says, each one's more lovely than the last. And the dairy farmer says, oh, get him some wine. And he goes, no, you're a dairy farmer. I would like to sample your milk. Mm-hmm. The milk is weird.
Yeah.
It is weird.
But it's because milk has symbolism.
Sure.
Right? And I love that, people take milk baths. There's something about the milk, the purity of white milk, this evil man wanting to drink this purity of white milk. White milk is also like what people describe they describe the young skin is nubile. It's milky, right? That kind of thing. You got these young daughters standing there. You got these other girls that we're going to find out in just a minute are under the floorboards who he's been harboring. So you have all of this kind of coming together. Plus he's taking of his milk, is taking of his purchase of what he's done on that farm. And it's just, all of it is like, it's weirdly emasculating what he's doing to him.
Well, and it seems that all of what Landa wants to do is to make him uncomfortable.
Yes.
He knows that this guy knows that he's here looking for Jews that are being hidden from the Nazis.
Yes.
And so rather than just going hey, I'm here to look for Jews being hidden from the Nazis, he's extending every moment. And this is really interesting, I think, because we just did our month on Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Is that this is suspense. I think this is Tarantino's most Hitchcockian film. Ooh. Particularly this opening scene, because it's all about extending time. It's all about suspense. It's not about thrills. And everything goes really slowly, including they pour him the milk. And we really watch that milk get poured. And we see him start to drink. And then we see him drink down the whole big glass of milk, which makes me wonder, how many takes did they do?
Yeah.
Because drinking a whole big glass of milk, how many of those can you do and still look like that was delicious?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like milk. I would have trouble drinking down one big glass of milk. No, I don't drink milk.
I only like it with Nilla wafers. That's the only way.
Sure, I understand that. I mean, over a nice bowl of cereal, I'll have some milk. But yeah, I don't. Drinking a glass of milk just sounds gross to me.
Yeah.
And everyone is staring as he drinks this thing down, and then with so much enthusiasm compliments the milk. I mean, he is just says bravo to the cows. It's a really, really funny scene. And then says, this is private, and asks the girls to go outside. They go outside. And then he says, I regret to inform you, but I've exhausted my French. It would embarrass me to keep talking. I hear you speak English very well, to which he says, oui. And then they says, let's speak in English.
Well, I'm very familiar with you and your family. I have no way of knowing if you are familiar with who I am. Are you aware of my existence?
Yes.
His performance is great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Great dead eyes. Great
Yeah.
eyes of like half asleep. Eyes that are of pure fear the whole time.
Yeah. And there's a sense of inevitability in the scene.
Yes.
That he knows, like, we have to go through this charade.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm not getting out of this.
To me, I liken it when you watch the nature specials and when the lion or the predator finally clamps down on the prey, the eyes just accept the situation. And that's what he feels like. He feels like he's already in the mouth of the predator.
Yeah. And he forces him. Well, and that's what he's doing, because he's toying with him.
Yes, he's just moving him around.
Because the next thing he does is force him to say, hey, well, if you say you know who I am, then who am I?
Yeah.
And he says, oh, well, I hear the Fuhrer has put you in charge of finding Jews. And he's, oh, I couldn't have said it better myself. And he seems so enthusiastic and happy.
But the meaning of your visit, pleasant though it is mysterious to me. The Germans looked through my house 9 months ago for hiding Jews and found nothing.
I'm aware of that. But like any enterprise, when under new management, there's always a slight duplication of efforts. Most of it being a complete waste of time, but needs to be done nevertheless.
And then we see him pull out paper and fountain pen, and he's meticulously placing everything in just the right spot. And again, this is just extending the tension. And he says, I want to ask you a few questions. And he asks about there are 4 Jewish families in this dairy farming area, and they know what happened to 3 of them, and one of them, they don't know what happened to them. And he says, what do you know about them? And the guy's like, well, I just know rumors. Well, rumors are great.
I love rumors. Facts can be so misleading. Were rumors true or false are often revealing. So, Monsieur Lapadite, what rumors have you heard?
And he forces the guy to say the names of each of the people and say what the rumors are. And the farmer asks to smoke his pipe, and he gets up to smoke his pipe. And every one of these little details, him lighting the pipe, him all these things, plating out the paper, the fountain pen, they just increase the tension because it's so slowly paced.
Landa's pipe.
Oh, dude, when he brings out that pipe.
Is one of the most incredible things in the movie. It is so perfect in its audacity, in its size. It is the pipe that an arrogant man would have, who fears nothing. Because it's ridiculous. Any other man pulls a pipe like that, almost any other man, it's ridiculous. You're trying too hard. With him, it's perfectly within his personality.
Why do you think he has that pipe?
I think it's to show his dominance. It's the biggest pipe in the room. It's almost like a sausage, what they call comparing penis sizes. He's pulling out the larger pipe.
Well, it's very clear.
And the brightest pipe.
It is so ridiculous. And what I think, too, is that it goes to this thing of toying with something.
Yes.
Is that Landa is a sadist.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason for him to do anything that he's doing in here.
Not at all.
He already knows where the Jews are hidden. Yep. The only reason to do it this way is to torture this guy.
He's a psychopath.
Yeah.
Legitimate psychopath.
Absolutely. And him pulling out that ridiculous pipe is just like, yeah, and look at this.
Yeah.
It is such a weird moment. And as he's lighting his pipe and we start smoking, the camera moves down along the body, down past the legs to the floorboards, looks underneath through the cracks in the floorboards, and there we see the Jewish family is hiding.
And they're covering their mouths. I think it's the smoke. We follow the pipe smoke down, I think.
Is that what it is?
I think.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And now he's asking for another glass of milk. And then again, he's still asking about himself. He says, there's a nickname that people call me. Yeah. And of course, the farmer doesn't want to say it. He's putting the farm in this horrible trap, which is like, I don't want to tell you the name that might be offensive to you just so you can kill me. And finally, he does convince him to say it. He says, they call you the Jew hunter.
The feature that makes me such an effective hunter of the Jews is, as opposed to most German soldiers, I can think like a Jew, where they can only think like a German.
And then we get into this thing of what makes Landa a good Jew hunter. And again, this is some crazy logic here.
Yeah.
Which is that there are traits that the Germans have in common with the beast, and I think those traits are cunning and predatory instincts of the hawk. The German is like a hawk.
But if one were to determine what attributes the Jews share with the beast, it would be that of the rat. But where our conclusions differ is I don't consider the comparison an insult.
You know, that the rat lives in a hostile world. You know, what if you were a rat, you would do what a rat does. And he says too, and this was where it gets really interesting to me, is he says,
if a rat were to scamper through your front door right now, would you greet it with hostility?
I suppose I would.
Has a rat ever done anything to you to create this animosity you feel toward him?
which is an interesting thing with this in this extremely anti-Semitic character. I mean, he literally is the Jew hunter.
Yeah.
And he has no compunction about killing Jews.
Yeah.
But then he's actually defending the position of the Jew by saying, what has the Jew done to you, essentially, as the rat?
Rats spread disease. They bite people.
Rats were the cause of the bubonic plague, but that's some time ago. I propose to you, any disease a rat could spread, a squirrel could equally carry. Would you agree?
Right.
Yet I assume you don't share the same animosity with squirrels that you do with rats, do you?
Do you think that Londa actually hates Jews? Is he an anti-Semitic?
I think he's anti-everyone, but because the German army and the Nazis have given him a uniform to wear and the support to go after Jewish people, to indulge his psychopathy or psychopathic natures. In this moment, at this time in his life, he hates Jews. And later we find out he's derisive towards black people as well later on, but certainly derisive towards Jews in this moment. Now, when he says this, right, this is an interesting point of discussion. I know it's a 3 or 2.5 hour film, but it's an interesting point when he talks about the rat coming in, oh, what's the rat done to you? You choose hostility, right? But accepting that comparison is accepting that a Jewish person is a rat. And then accepting that if a Jewish person comes into your place, you're immediately going to be defensive. And then he turns it on the guy. When he turns it on the guy, he's like, well, why would you feel this way, right? He's trying to get the guy to be in his camp, in his support of what he's doing. And it's a very interesting psychological approach to it all. And it's unsettling as hell.
It's a weird scene. So as a Jewish person,
yes,
like I don't have an answer to this, but part of me is like, I don't know that he's anti-Semitic. I think he's a psychopath.
Okay.
I think if it was Mormons,
if he was told to hunt Mormons,
he would be the same.
Use this same kind of philosophy.
Is that because he shows no compunction about killing anyone, switching sides. He doesn't have any particular loyalty.
Right.
I think he likes hunting and killing people.
Yes.
And I think he likes fucking with people.
Yes.
You know, and this is what part of what makes him such a great villain is he sees the fallacy of the construct in which he lives.
Yeah.
Like he goes, this is all ridiculous.
Oh, yes, of course he does.
You know, this is a stupid thing. And I'm doing this job.
They're letting me do this job.
Yeah.
Which is within itself insane.
Yeah. And then I love this moment.
If a rat were to walk in here right now as I'm talking, would you greet it with a source of your delicious milk?
Now, that's such an amazing moment because, first of all, it's what we've been talking about, which is your preconceived notions of the rat or the Jew have forced you to treat it differently than you would treat the squirrel, even though they're both rodents, you know. But what did he just drink?
Yeah,
He had a saucer of milk.
Right.
And he's the rat. I mean, he came in a person who was unquestionably a threat to him, who he knows is a threat. He did give the saucer of milk to. I find that really interesting. And the other thing he says is that this is the problem with why the Germans have trouble finding the Jews, because they think like a hawk, whereas I can think like a Jew. Which, you know, again, I'm a Jewish man.
Right.
We're talking about the Holocaust here. This is as big and important a thing. And so, like, there's a weird sort of...
And this is the beginning, right, Steve? Because 1941, is the Holocaust in full swing at this point?
Yes.
Or is it building into where we see later on?
I mean, Hitler takes power in 1933.
Yeah.
I think the rules on Jews wearing yellow stars and being stripped of their abilities to own stores and things like that starts happening in 1936.
Right.
Kristallnacht might be 1937, which is when all the Jewish buildings were attacked and the glass was all broken and the temples were attacked and all that.
Right.
Jews started to get rounded up at 1939.
Okay, and then the gas chambers are almost immediately afterwards.
Well, I did not actually research the timeline so much, but
Right.
it's a hard topic to talk about. But
Sure.
they got better.
Yeah.
Okay. So initially, when they started killing Jews, they had firing squads,
Right.
and that wasn't very efficient because bullets are expensive. This is literally the conversation that is happening in the German high command: is we can't waste a bullet on a Jew, and so it became how do we more efficiently kill them? And it's 42, 43 when the really big concentration camps of Dachau and Auschwitz and Birkenau and all those places really start built with the showers and the gas chambers and the mass graves and all that stuff. So that's coming.
Yeah.
I don't know when the first one of those kinds of camps was really built, but so this is the beginning.
Do you think he's Jewish?
Londa?
Half Jewish? Have you ever thought of it?
No.
No.
Do you think he is?
Yes.
Okay.
It struck me as I was watching it this time. Because, remember, Hitler was half Jewish.
There's a rumor that he might have been.
rumor,
The rumor might have been quarter Jewish.
Yeah, quarter Jewish. So, wouldn't this be interesting? This is why he can really supposedly hunt Jewish people, is because he feels an affinity for them. He knows them. He senses them. Things of that nature. I don't know. But it occurred to me last night, wouldn't this be interesting if he was actually half Jewish? And then it puts a whole other element to this film. A self-hatred.
Yeah, it's what's so here's why I don't think that, and of course you could be right. Is that I don't think there's any self-hatred in this guy at all. I think this guy is so pleased with himself all the time.
Yeah,
he is. Because he's a fucking sociopath, and he is having a ball.
Yeah,
that fucking with this guy is great. Strangling a woman is great. But totally turning on everybody that he's the more fucked up things he does, the happier he seems to be.
Yeah.
Like I don't see him as a person with divided loyalties or repressing, but of course we don't know.
Right.
And then we get to this point where he goes, listen, my job obviously is to bring in the soldiers and search this whole place, and we both know that I'm going to find irregularities.
That is unless you have something to tell me that makes the conducting of a search unnecessary. I might add also that any information that makes the performance of my duty easier will not be met with punishment. Actually, quite the contrary. It will be met with reward.
And you could see the reaction on this guy's face. Do you think that he knew from the moment he saw Londa that he was going to give up the Jews?
Yes. I know from the moment he saw Londa, no. I think from the moment he saw Londa, he was afraid that was the end result, going to be the end result, because he's in way over his head with someone like Londa.
And so that's what I think too.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. Is that, and there's this amazing expression of pain on his face, and the long pause, and he says, "You're sheltering enemies of the state, are you not?" And there's a pause, and very softly, with tears in his eyes, he says, "Yes."
You're sheltering them underneath your floorboards, aren't you?
Yes.
So Londa knew the whole time where they were.
Well, because the job is so easy to him, he has to create these scenarios in order to give him something to do.
Some turn on in some way, really. And then he asks them to point to the areas where they're hiding. And this man crying points to where they are. The colonel stands up, and he stands there and points down with his pipe, and then says, and I think that then let's be really clear. Londa's a genius.
Yeah.
He is a brilliant man. And he says, well, since I haven't heard any disturbance, I assume they don't speak English. Yeah. Which makes sense. And then he says, okay, we're going to switch back to French, and I'm going to leave. And so they switch back to French, and he says, oh, thank you for your hospitality. And he walks out as the music is riding up, and then he gestures for his soldiers to come in. And kind of says, we won't be bothering your family anymore. Farewell. And the farmer says, adieu. And the soldiers open fire through the floorboards. It is just a brutal slaughter.
Yeah.
Yep. And a young woman runs out through like the window underneath the floorboards and starts running. And out comes Londa, lifts up his handgun, aims. She's a good distance away. That would be an amazing shot. We see her. She's covered in blood. She's sobbing, and he doesn't fire. And then he says,
Au revoir, Shoshana!
with a big grin on his head, on his face, Why does he let her go?
Oh, because you can't shoot her from here.
He's
But I
got
think-
dudes with a car. I mean,
Yeah,
like
a good point. But I think he lets her go because it's sporting. You know what I'm saying? It's sporting for him to let her go, so then he can find her later.
yeah, that's what I think too.
Yeah, it's teasing it out. Here, go run. I'm gonna catch you later. I'll catch you later. I found you here. I'll find you again.
That's what I think too. I think he likes this game. He loves being the Jew hunter. If he caught her, then that's one less Jew he can hunt.
Yeah,
Yeah. And by the way, I think this opening scene is 22, 23 minutes long.
incredible.
And this thing we're going to see throughout this film is really long scenes. And I'll tell you right now, will say two opposite things.
Okay.
One thing is, this is where I see it as a Hitchcockian film, his ability to pull out tension, his ability to give you suspense, his ability to plant information, like you see the eye looking through the floorboard,
Yep.
and your dread of that comes, and the fact that he extends the time with the pipe and the milk and all these conversations, laying out the paper and the pen does raise the tension. And I 100% think that is true. And if I were the editor on this film, I'd cut this shit down. Not as much in this scene, because I think this
Right,
scene
it
is
seems
brilliant.
incredible.
But later on, there's some things where it's like,
Yeah, the basement scene in the
Goes on.
bar. It goes.
do you know how long that
goes
one is,
on
by the
way
way?
too long? No.
37 minutes long.
Oh my god, yeah, that goes on way too long.
Way too long.
But this opening scene is a great way to give you exposition. It's people tell us on the top 10 show you should do the top 10 greatest introductions of an actor or a character in a movie. This is incredible.
This is on the list.
This is Christoph's first movie. I don't know because he was a TV actor. I think it's his first feature film ever.
Is it?
And he's incredible. And Tarantino found him. Watching something on German TV or someone suggest something and he watched this guy and he's like he saw this guy could play this character and brought him in, and he's phenomenal in this role. And this whole exposition, by the time this scene is done, you understand who this character is. You understand the dread that this character brings to every room he walks into. And you understand that you're dealing with an absolute psychopath. And he immediately, before the movie's even maybe a quarter of the way in, he's already one of the greatest villains to ever be on film. Before you see the rest of the movie.
Would you like to know who Quentin Tarantino originally wanted to cast in this role?
Oh my God. Harvey Keitel?
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Thank God he did not.
I mean, look, Leo has impressed me. I mean,
Sure, Leo's a good actor.
he's a really good actor.
Great actor, even.
But this guy, I mean,
No, this is so authentic.
this is so magical what he does.
It's so authentic.
Chapter 2, Inglourious Basterds. Oh, something I should have said that I forgot to mention. So, first of all, the title Inglourious Basterds is spelled in this really weird way.
Yeah, Bastards.
And there's the extra U in Inglorious, and that it is not really based on, but there's an Italian movie, which I think is 1978, which is called Inglourious Basterds. And Tarantino liked the title. And he's been asked multiple times, why do you have the weird spelling? And he's given, this doesn't seem to be a right answer. One was to differentiate it from the title. One is because he said, oh, well, people don't say bastards. They say bastards, which sounds like an E. There was a whole bunch of reasons he did it, but I think he just thought it was fun. I don't know.
Why not?
And the director from the Italian film, whose name is right in front of me, actually shows up in this movie as an SS officer, I think at the premiere.
Nice.
So we'll get to later. All right. We're on a training ground, and we got 7 troops lined up, and we have Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
His performance is really crazy in this movie.
Well, it lets you know, from this opening scene that is so incredible, 27 minutes, you said, very authentic scene, incredible acting, incredibly honest, awesome characters. We have this kind of over-the-top character in Brad Pitt. Whereas Landa's character is over the top, but over the top in a way that's believable and dread-inducing. Brad Pitt is doing that big old accent, doing what he's doing and all that, talking about my dad and talking about coming down from the mountains to go get till them Nazis. It's all very overly done. So you can decide for yourself, I believe, in this scene, whether you're in or you're out of this movie.
Well, and it's really the scene after this is just where it really hits me.
Yeah.
So Brad Pitt, he is recruiting 8 Jewish American soldiers that he wants to go parachute behind enemy lines to kill Nazis.
Yeah.
And he makes a speech.
Now, I'm the direct descendant of the mountain man Jim Bridger. That means I got a little engine in me. And our battle plan will be that of an Apache resistance. We will be cruel to the Germans. And through our cruelty, they will know who we are. And they will find the evidence of our cruelty and the disemboweled, dismembered, and disfigured bodies of their brothers we leave behind us. And the German won't be able to help themselves. But imagine the cruelty their brothers endured at our hands, and our boot heels, and the edge of our knives. And the German will be sickened by us, and the German will talk about us, and the German will fear us. And when the German closes their eyes at night, and they're tortured by their subconscious for the evil they have done, it will be with thoughts of us that they are tortured with. Sound good?
Yes, sir! This is what I think you're right. This is where the movie turns for me, and I don't know how I feel.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is being Jewish and what being Jewish means to me, you know, which is I'm not a vengeful person, you know, and I believe really strongly in rules of laws and justice and things like that. And he is saying, you guys are all going to owe me 100 German scalps. He wants to run this because he's a descendant from Apaches, and he wants to run this like an Apache resistance, you know, and to essentially scare the crap out of the Germans.
Guerrilla warfare.
It's
Basically.
it is, but it's more than guerrilla. It's not just guerrilla warfare, you know. Well, what do you think about this? Like, what's your feeling?
Look, you're a peaceful person,
I
but
am.
Israel has the Mossad. So, I mean,
Sure.
you know what I'm saying? I'm talking like this country has had to fight since its inception in 45 or 46, whenever it was officially became a country, amongst all these Arab countries right around it, constantly fighting for its survival. So it has to adapt certain warrior mentalities within its culture in order to remain where it is. And so this is another, to me, this is just another like window into some other Jewish people who want to fight, who want to be part of this, who want to get at, you know, the Germans and kill the Germans for what they're doing to their people, which has been, I wonder if it had been filtered out or had leaked out by now, how they were rounding up the Jews, what they were doing to the Jews, that kind of thing. So you bring these people together, and Sam Levine, who is a friend of mine through the Schmodown, we talked about this movie, and Sam said that Tarantino purposely looked for people, Jewish kids that you wouldn't think would be these hard-ass big dudes, blah, blah, blah. He wanted regular-looking Jewish kids to play these, or teenagers or 20-year-olds to play these parts so that they didn't look like they were this imposing force. And you see that. It's all BJ Novak couldn't scare, you know, and Sam too at that time. Sam, so he's still cherub-faced if you in the movie. So you see all these things. And so to me, he's just getting them riled up to go and do battle. This is no different to a degree of what I experienced in basic training when they start to tell you the things you have to chant when you're using your weapon. You know, what makes the blood grow, what makes the grass grow, blood, drill sergeant, blood. You know, you're trained into that mindset. And so that's what Brad Pitt is doing. He's training them into this mindset that they're going to be this force and they're going to do this thing. If they don't want to be a part of it, I'm sure they'd be like, I don't want to be a part of this unit. But they want to be a part of this unit.
I think my issue, well, and this is what we'll talk throughout, and much more when we get to the scene where we actually see what they're doing.
Yeah.
A lot of my problems with this film come from tone, is that how do we deal with what we're dealing with? So I don't have a problem with seeing a comedy about Nazis, you know, the producers, To Be or Not to Be.
Oh, right.
I mean, I grew up watching Hogan's Heroes.
Sure.
And like Mel Brooks said a thing is like because he got a lot of attacks in 1968 when he did The Producers.
Yeah.
You know, because that's only 13 years after the war has ended, or 23 years after the war has ended. And people are still like, you can't make jokes about this. You're a Jewish director with a bunch of Jewish actors. How can you do this? And what he said is that the most powerful thing we can do to fight against these ideas is to make them look ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't have a problem with that. And I don't have a problem with Nazis being the boogeyman in our adventure films. So Raiders of the Lost Ark, one of my favorite movies, Nazis are the bad guys. I don't have a problem with that. What's hard with this movie is that opening scene is very serious and dramatic.
Yeah.
And then we're going to these sort of weird revenge fantasies that are hyper violent, where I didn't see it in the theaters, but I'm sure people were laughing and cheering and all sorts of stuff watching some of this stuff.
I don't know if I remember that. I don't know if I remember that. There was laughing, and there was laughing obviously because there are comedic moments in the movie, dark comedic moments in the movie. But cheering, I don't know if there was necessarily cheering.
Because I don't know what Tarantino wants me to feel. I think that's sort of how is it because here's the thing.
Yeah.
I don't think that characters within a film all need to represent some kind of moral purity
Sure.
at all. There could be characters in the film that do things that are morally very questionable.
Yeah.
And there are lots of films we've talked about in the Cine-Files where characters were making choices and you felt unsure about, is this the right thing to do? What is the right thing to do here? So Ethan and the Searchers, or LA Confidential, just filled with all this moral, or another film that we haven't done, but maybe we'll someday, is which deals with a lot of this stuff, is Steven Spielberg's Munich.
Right.
And that is clearly about Israelis going out to revenge themselves and kill the people that had committed the atrocities in the Munich Olympics. But that movie is filled with moral ambiguity. You're not comfortable. You start out that movie going, let's go get those guys.
Right.
And by the end of that movie, you're going, I don't know how to feel about this.
Are we okay with the methods we chose in order to get these?
And the fact that film ends with the Twin Towers in the background.
Yeah.
Because I really think that movie is about, does violence beget violence? Like, how do we escape this? It forces you to ask these questions.
Yeah.
This movie's not doing that. This movie is like thrilling in the way that it handles this stuff.
Okay.
Or I think that's, but again, this is why I go like, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. I feel really weird.
I'll be honest with you. I have never watched this movie and been like cheering for the bastards. Never once.
How do you feel about?
Because they're so violent and they're so vicious, and they're carrying out of their anger and their revenge and justice and vengeance. It's done in a way that is ugly, but then again, in war, ugly things sometimes win the day. It's not all heroic stuff that you could put up on a movie. Sometimes it's that ugly missions that no one wants to talk about, that people are sent out to do behind closed doors, that they have plausible deniability about, that are the ugly truths about war. And once you get into something like this, it's like, well, where's the line? Because if they're not going to follow the line, why should we follow the line?
Of course. Well, this is this is what we're going to get to.
Yeah.
So let's hold that for a sec, but I want to come back to that point. So he says, hey, you guys want to do this, and they all, of course, go, yes, sir. And we cut to Hitler freaking out.
Yeah.
And we start hearing stuff about this Jewish bear.
Great Hitler, by the way.
Good Hitler.
For this movie. Great
Yeah.
Hitler. Yeah, the Jewish bear, the Jew bear.
We hear about the Jew bear.
Or the bear, I'm sorry, the bear Jew.
The bear Jew, right.
Right.
And he's like, there are these guys. So we hear that clearly the bastards are doing something, and that Hitler wants them stopped because because it is doing what they wanted, which is hurting German morale.
Exactly.
And it's scaring people. And we hear that there's this private who was the only known survivor of this ambush, and they bring him in, and he starts to describe that they killed everyone except for a few guys, and they started scalping everyone. And we cut to Brad Pitt and his men, and they are scalping people.
Yeah, we go back to the flashback, him telling the story as we experience this.
And this is the thing, is like, I'm 100% in agreement with you that wars aren't pretty, and that sometimes things have to happen to win a war.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you go, well, what if doing this kind of heinous act saves these 1,000 soldiers over here?
Right.
Is it worth it? And I'm 100% believe movies should engage in those questions. I don't know that that's what Tarantino's doing in this film.
Okay.
And scalping is a really weird one.
Well, yeah. Well, because of the Native American aspect of it, all saying Brad Pitt's a half Apache or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know Pitt's actual origin, but the character obviously is half Apache. So it's to send a signal to these to the Germans for what they're doing. Yeah, and the question is for yourself: like, are you happy? Like this scene we're about to talk about. At no point in this scene am I okay with anything that's happening.
Yeah, I'm not either.
And I don't think you're supposed to be. That's what the thing is about this movie. It's about the ugliness and the dirtiness, and it's what you saw in the 70s versions of these World War II movies done in the 70s. They had an uglier aspect to them, more grittier, dirtier, blacker aspect to them than you had seen in these, like Sergeant York and these,
Right.
saving everybody and that kind of thing. These were the more uglier truths of what might have happened over there. And remember, people think Vietnam is the first time we had PTSD or people coming back. No, people came back from World War II pretty messed up. World War I as well. So just because it was like, the golden generation doesn't mean people weren't still like had a hard time talking about it,
we hear a little bit more about, like, they picked up some other guys, like a Austrian Jew who had escaped and had kind of joined their group. And then we start to hear there's one German they've brought in, which is Stiglitz. And then
Hugo Stiglitz.
As soon as we start talking about Hugo Stiglitz, who narrates our little flashback into his life?
Sam Jackson.
The reason for Hugo Stiglitz's celebrity among German soldiers is simple. As a German enlisted man, he killed 13 Gestapo officers.
Man, we've had a lot of Sam Jackson lately in small. Like, we just literally, our last film was Coming to America, which he showed up. And of course, Sam Jackson is a huge collaborator with Quentin Tarantino, and he does this narration of this guy who is a German soldier who went after the Nazis himself. And there's just brutal video of all the killing, including him like driving his hand into a dude's mouth or something. It just looks awful. And he got captured, and the bastards heard about him, and they came to break him out. I love Brad Pitt's when he comes to talk to him, he goes, "Are you Hugo Stiglitz?" And the guy nods, and he says, "We're the bastards. Have you heard of us?" Nod. And then he says,
"We just want to say we're a big fan of your work when it comes to killing Nazis. I think you show great talent, and I pride myself in having an eye for that kind of talent. Your status as a Nazi killer is still amateur. We all come here to see if you want to go pro."
Again, a nod.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about this. There's a lot of film reference throughout this movie. That is like a speech that a talent scout gives to a young talent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We such a lot of talent, and I recognize talent, you know, or like
you got it, kid.
A baseball scout or something like that. That's kind of how this sounds.
Yep.
And then we go back to this bridge where we've got these guys, and we're talking to a German sergeant. And he recognizes who they are, and he basically offers them two choices. Either you tell us exactly where all your German soldiers are stationed in this orchard that we want to go attack, numbers, armament, where they're positioned, or we're going to kill you.
Right.
And this German soldier is quite brave. And he says, "You can't expect me to give information that would put German lives in danger." To which Brad Pitt responds,
"Well, now, Warner, that's where you're wrong, because that's exactly what I expect. I need to know about Germans hiding in trees, and you need to tell me. And you need to tell me right now. Now just take that finger of yours and point out on this here map where this party's being held. How many's it coming, and what they brought to play with."
And the sergeant, with great dignity, I think, puts his hand to his heart and says, "I respectfully refuse, sir." And then you hear this bang.
Hear that?
Yes.
It's Sergeant Donnie Donowitz. You might know him better by his nickname, the Bear Jew.
Yes, he's heard of the Bear Jew. What did you hear? And it's funny because this is very similar to what we saw in the first scene where Londa says, "What have you heard about me?" And he says, "I hear this is a guy who beats German soldiers with a club."
He bashes the brains in with a baseball bat, what he does. And Werner, I'm going to ask you one last goddamn time. If you still respectfully refuse, I'm calling the Bear Jew over. He's going to take that big bat of his, and he's going to beat your ass to death with it.
And the sergeant says, "Fuck you and your Jew dogs." And all the bastards are thrilled to hear this because they don't get to go see movies. This is the best entertainment they get.
Yeah, that's what Pitt says.
And we call off to Donnie Donowitz, and he says,
"Guy's German here wants to die for country. Oblige him."
And there is a long pause, and we hear the banging of the bat against the stone, and the camera pushes in on the German, and the music is building, and it pushes in on the black in the tunnel, and then it pushes back in on the German. It just goes on forever.
Yeah.
You know, and it is good, but it goes on for me forever. And then out comes Donnie, the Bear Jew, Eli Roth. Want to know who was originally he wanted to cast?
Oh, Ben Affleck?
Adam Sandler.
Oh, Jesus. That would not have worked.
He was doing Funny People at the time.
Oh, okay.
So he couldn't do it.
Right.
Well, this is it's weird. And he comes out and points to like a medal on the guy's chest, and he says,
"Aren't you for killing Jews? Bravery."
And then he just beats him to death.
The guy says, no bravery.
Right.
Which is an interesting thing to say, and then boom.
Which, there's no question, this is a brave man. And they beat him to death just brutally.
Yeah. It's ugly. It's nasty. That's what I tell you. Like, there's
no,
no cheering here. This is ugly what they're doing.
Well, but then Donnie cheers and all the bastards cheer.
Right. They cheer. But I'm telling you, I don't think the audience is cheering for this as it's happening. Because we don't know what this German soldier has done. We don't know the German soldier's background. We don't know if that guy has actually killed Jews or done anything like that. You know, you find out, you know, like these guys got recruited into this shit and had to work. It was money. That kind of, I'm not excusing, obviously I'm not excusing anything, but you don't know in terms of the world of the movie what this German soldier has done. He's just a Nazi. So they're all Nazis to them. There's no like gray area with them. So for the bastards, I mean. So they're going to mete out their justice. What he does just is, once again, and I think that, Steve, you kind of accidentally stumbled upon this. The way to look at this movie is that both of these men are psychopaths in different ways.
Londa and Brad Pitt's and
Brad Pitt's character.
Aldo.
Aldo
Rain.
Aldo, which is a great reference to. But, you know, both of these men are psychopaths in different ways. And they mete out their justice in different, and they both enjoy dragging out their justice just as much as the other one. It depends on you how you feel about it, which way you want to go about it, right? Obviously, Landa is more of the villain of the piece, but the way Pitt is fighting him is at his level.
Well,
and that's interesting.
This is
or Ray is fighting him.
I guess this is why I struggle with the movie. Is that I don't have a problem with violence on film. And like Pulp Fiction has a lot of violence.
Sure.
But Pulp Fiction isn't about anything important. You don't watch Pulp Fiction going, there's a deep message here.
Yeah.
In fact, it's really the opposite. Like a lot of Pulp Fiction is like, isn't it thrilling that we're playing in this area? And there's all sorts of violent thrills and funny thrills and all these twists and turns within the structure of that plot. That's fun.
Right.
But you don't go, oh, this means something. And because of the way this film, the way that opening scene plays, and then the way this scene plays, I go like, you know, I really want to go to Quentin Tarantino's like, what were you trying to say? Like, why? What was the point of this film? And I don't quite know what it is.
Maybe there isn't a point. He was just having fun himself.
Well, that's what I think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that's what I think it is.
Because I want to look up the word inglorious, right? It's not supposed to be a word that is a positive word to have.
No.
Glorious bastard, that would be something, right? Even bastard meaning fatherless children, right?
Right.
So the idea of an inglorious thing, what does it mean?
Well, it means not glorious.
Right. Well, it's an action or situation causing shame or a loss of honor. And that's essentially what they're doing, causing shame and a loss of honor to these people and what they're doing.
Wait.
Scalping them is the loss of honor.
For the Germans.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And the same thing is going on Landa's side. He is causing shame and loss of honor to whoever he
Do
comes
the
in
bastards
contact.
have any honor?
In my opinion, the honor that they're killing Nazis, yes, but the way they're going about it is breaking all the laws of the Geneva Convention. So
Right.
What kind of, do they have the full, are they honorable people? Maybe not in their tactics, but certainly in their intention.
Do you think that sergeant deserved to be beaten to death and then scalped?
No.
Neither do I.
But I thought the sergeant certainly deserved to die.
Why?
Because it's war. And you've got to, this guy, if you're not going to send him back, you've got to send him as a message to the other Nazis to scare them. That's their tactic.
That is what they're doing.
Right.
But I don't think that enemy soldiers deserve to die if they are captured, which they were. I mean, and this is the problem with the whole, like...
Well, you'll see. I mean, what would you do? I don't know what you would do. You haven't been in a theater of war. You haven't been trained to be in a theater of war. You would think, you know, that you'll do these things, but you never know. And I think that's what, and a lot of people who came back from the war damaged probably went in like you thinking one thing and had to do some terrible shit and came out and were damaged.
It's interesting that you say that. So,
and I'm not denying that you might not, you might still stay,
of course.
Yeah,
no, I get it. No, I know. I don't know how I would behave.
Yeah,
absolutely. I don't, you know, and I don't know if I would have the courage to, I mean, who knows? I don't know how I would act under fire. Absolutely. So there's actually is a group of Jewish special forces unit that parachuted behind enemy lines before D-Day.
Oh, wow.
And they were, and in fact, in this case, the captain, the leader of the group, was also Jewish. Fred Meyer was his name. And they parachuted into Austria. And their mission was to monitor troop movements going over the Italian Alps.
Mm-hmm.
That was where it started. And the main guy, Fred Meyer, actually posed as a wounded German soldier. And it was the same thing. It was all like Jewish immigrants from Germany who had escaped the Holocaust, who had come to the U.S. and then volunteered to go back in. So they were all fluent German speakers. Right. And this guy, the leader, posed as a wounded German soldier, actually pulled a salary while living in Innsbruck, Austria. He put together a courier system of women moving back and forth across the Alps to give, they found all sorts of troop movements, supply lines, when the supply trains were coming, schedules for the trains. They found Hitler's bunker.
Wow.
And sent that information. And then Fred Meyer said, you know what, I think we have enough people here to launch an underground resistance. Let me organize it. And the OSS said, no. We want your information. That's the most important thing. We actually don't want you to do any fighting.
Right.
We want information. And I'll tell you more about his story a little later because he's a really interesting person.
Sounds like it.
I mean, it's like the idea, certainly throughout history, there are times where someone said, let's scare the crap out of these people with our barbarity. That is definitely a tactic. It's not a tactic I like.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I really hate his Boston accent doing that.
Eli Roth?
Yeah, I just really hate. Not that I'm not saying it's inauthentic. I think he is from Boston. It's just I hate that he's just so overt about it. It's just so he's so on the nose. He
says he modeled this character after a buddy of his from Boston.
Yeah, sounds
so he
right.
was just doing that guy.
Ted Wade Yard.
And of course, the next person they say, when another guy gets shot, and they say, "Okay, why don't you come up? Do you want to point out where the stuff is?" And the guy goes, "It's here and here and here and here and here." So clearly, the murder of the first guy definitely works.
The tactics worked.
And it's funny. There's a really weird bit of filmmaking that normally is a thing you would never do, which is, as he's pointing out, we have Brad Pitt, we have the guy translating from the German, and we have the German soldier, and we have the map. And rather than doing it in a wide shot or doing it in cuts where we see Brad Pitt, we see a cut of the map, we see the guy, is that it's one camera shot that's moving from guy to translator to Brad Pitt to map to translator to guy to Brad Pitt to map, which is something you generally don't do, but it actually works really well here. And then we go back to Hitler, and he asks, how did you survive? And he says, oh, well, they let me go.
Now, when you report what happened here, you can't tell them you told us what you told us. They'll shoot you. They're gonna want to know why you so special we let you live. So tell them, we let you live so you could spread the word through the ranks what's gonna happen to every Nazi we find.
And now we're back to Hitler, who's saying, don't tell anybody what you saw. And then we ask if they marked you.
Yeah, yes.
And he says, yes. And now we're back.
Like the other survivors.
Yeah.
So this has happened for quite
This has happened before.
Yeah.
We go back to Brad Pitt, and he asks what he's going to do when he gets home. And he's like, oh, I'm going to go hug my mother. Will you take off the uniform? And he says he's going to burn the uniform.
Right.
And Brad says, that's what we thought.
We don't like that. You see, we like our Nazis in uniforms. That way you can spot them, just like that. So you take off that uniform, ain't nobody going to know you's a Nazi. That don't sit well with us. So I'm gonna give you a little something you can't take off.
And there's back to Hitler, and he's taken off his hat, and we see that swastika-shaped scar on his forehead. And then we're back to a low angle looking up at Brad Pitt, and I forget who the other bastard is. Oh, I think it's Eli Roth.
Yeah, it's Eli Roth.
You know, Lieutenant, you're pretty good at that. Well, you get to Carnegie Hall, don't you? Practice.
Have you ever heard about this? I'd done a lot of World War II deep dive research and study, and I'd never heard.
Scarring people with swastikas?
Yeah.
No, I've never.
Such an interesting concept to put in a film.
Of course, it bothers me.
It does.
Of course it does.
That does.
Why wouldn't it?
Oh, I wouldn't. It doesn't bother me at all.
John.
Yeah.
Chapter 3, German Night in Paris.
Oh.
We've reached 1944, and we're at a movie theater. And there's a marquee, and there's a woman who climbs up. We see a Leni Riefenstahl movie is playing, who is, of course, the infamous director of Triumph of the Will and Olympia.
Have you seen those?
Yes.
I have not. Should I?
You should see Olympia.
Okay.
So, because the filmmaking is beautiful. I mean, the woman was a brilliant filmmaker, and Olympia. Here's what I would do: is go on YouTube and do a search for Lenny Riefenstahl Olympia and watch the diving sequence, or watch some of the. It is, as a sports lover, it is some of the best early filming of sports in an artistic way that you would really appreciate.
Okay.
Whether or not you want to watch the whole movie, I mean, and Triumph of the Will, or Triumph of the Spirit. No, Triumph of the Will.
Triumph of the Will.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really hard.
It's like Birth of a Nation. I'm good not seeing it.
I don't want to say it's worse than Birth of the Nation. That's a tough competition.
Okay.
Here's the
either way, I don't want to see either one of those.
That's like you. There's no benefit of comparing the Holocaust to slavery.
Yeah, right.
Like, just like they're horrible.
Yeah.
Let's walk away.
Yeah, exactly.
And certainly Birth of a Nation and Triumph of the Will, same thing. It's horrible. Anyway, she's changing the title on the marquee, and we see that this is Shoshana Dreyfus, the girl that ran away from Londa. This is 4 years after the massacre of her family, and a soldier walks up, whose actor's name I don't have in here.
Oh, Daniel Bruhl.
Okay.
A very young Daniel Bruhl.
So Daniel Bruhl walks up, and he wants to talk movies with her because he's a big movie fan. And she does not want to talk to him.
Right.
Because he is a German soldier.
He's wearing his uniform.
Yeah. And we find out that she actually owns it, that she inherited this movie theater from her aunt. And he keeps trying to talk movies. And finally, she climbs down that ladder. She doesn't even finish doing the title, wants to head inside. And he asks an interesting question, which he's like, well, if you hate the Germans and hate Leni Riefenstahl, why do you have her name up on the marquee? And she says, because the French respect directors.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because there's a weird way that this movie about killing Nazis is a movie about movies.
Yeah.
Because we already had Aldo Rain talk about, like, I see your talent.
Right.
And now we're at a movie theater. And now we have the, Jewish survivor of the massacre of her family say that she will put Leni Riefenstahl's name, the most important propagandist under Hitler, to defame and degrade the Jews because we respect directors. It's a really interesting thing there. And he wants to know her name. And she goes, oh, do you want to see my papers? Which is a great, like, you can force me to show me your name.
Right.
But I ain't going to do it willingly. And he gives her his ID. And we see that her name is Emmanuelle, which it's not.
Mimieux, which is an event, I think is an homage to Yvette Mimieux, who's a famous French actress.
Well, there's so many film references.
And Emmanuel Béart. So, yeah.
Well, and maybe this is the thing just about Tarantino in general. He's not interested in the world. He's interested in film.
Yeah.
And his films, all of his films on some level are about film.
Right.
Pulp Fiction is a film about Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Kill Bill is a film all about revenge films.
Grindhouse, same thing.
Yeah.
It's Grindhouse.
And this is his film about World War II films.
Yeah, right.
But not his film about World War II. I guess that's maybe that's where I can't quite relate to it 100%.
Okay.
And he's still trying to charm her. It was a pleasure meeting a fellow movie lover, and says goodbye, and she watches him go. And then later on, we're in some cafe, and she's, smoking and having a little drink of wine. And who walks by in the window but Frederick, the same German soldier?
Frederick Zoller.
And he wants to come in, and she's like, would you please stop pestering me? And he is so, let me ask you this question. How do you feel about him at this point in the film?
He's persistent, but also disrespectful. She's made it very clear that she does not want him around, right? She's not being coy about it.
No,
she's not being playfully flirty about it.
And particularly considering that she's a French woman and he's a German soldier.
Exactly.
She's been pretty strong with him.
And, she's in a situation, he's the power. No matter what her resistance is, she is in a submissive position just by the fact that they are in occupied France. And says what she says to him, go find some girl who's Vichy. Go find some Vichy girl. And she tries to be very clear with him, like, stop being a child. Don't be a child. You know the reasons why, you know the situation, blah, blah, blah. So she's very clear with him. He's persistent.
But what do you think? So I'll just say what I think.
Yeah.
Is that what's interesting about it, I think at this moment in the movie, you kind of like and believe him.
I don't. He's wearing a Nazi uniform. I think he's wearing a Nazi uniform. For me, immediately, I don't trust him, and especially because the way Landa has been laid out, this is my mentality as I watch any person wearing a Nazi uniform who's trying to be nice initially. I want to get something from this, and later on, we see.
There's no question that he is a horrible person.
Yeah.
But I think he charms me a little bit in going like, because what I see that he is, I having watched the whole film, I go, this was all an act. But what I see is that he genuinely is a film lover, which I think he is.
Right.
And that he is trying to, hey, don't see me as a German soldier. And he
says that more than just a uniform.
Yeah. And he's charming in his way, or trying to be charming, and he says, like, she says, stop being a pest. He says, I don't want to be a pest. And then a German officer shows up and he immediately slaps to attention and salutes, but the officer seems more excited about seeing him and shakes his hand. There's a big smile, and she's looking at this going, what is going on? Asks, who is he? And his response is, oh, I thought you thought I was just a uniform. And then she goes, well, maybe you're someone's son, like you're the son of a general or something like that. And then another German sees him and goes, oh my God, and runs up and talks to him. And the German and a girl comes in, they shake his hand, and she's watching, and there's this excited conversation in German. And then they ask for an autograph.
Yeah. And the girl says, you're so lucky
to
have this man as your boyfriend.
Yeah. To be the girlfriend of a war hero.
Yeah, of a war hero.
Yeah. And they go away very proud of their autograph, and she's now, okay, you're a war hero.
Yeah.
And he explains, I was alone in a bell tower, walled off city, held off 300 enemy soldiers, and that he was a sniper. And she asked, how many did you kill? And this is just insane, these numbers. 68 the first day, 150 the second day, 32 the third day.
Yeah.
That is.
But I don't know if he's telling the truth.
I don't know either.
300 people, apparently. One guy.
I don't know
if he's telling the truth.
And what's interesting too, and that they go on that, that they wanted to make a movie about him. He's going to be the German Sergeant York, who you mentioned before.
Yeah, right.
And it ends up that he talked to Goebbels, and Goebbels wanted him to play himself in the movie, which he did. And that Goebbels thinks the movie will make him the country's Van Johnson, which is it's all these weird movie references.
Great reference.
Yeah. And the film is called Nation's Pride, and it's starring him. And he, again, in a self-deprecating way, goes like, yeah, I know, it's comical. And she says, good luck with your movie. I hope it goes well for you and Joseph. And she is gone. Yep. She walks out. What's weird to me is like, this is another, because this is really Audie Murphy in a weird way. And the Audie Murphy, for those of you who don't know, is the most decorated American in the history of the country. Not just the Congressional Medal of Honor, but just like a ton of awards. And he became a movie star. And he played himself in the movie The Audie Murphy Story.
Yeah.
And it's not these numbers, but he did defend a whole bunch of people single-handedly. It's an incredibly heroic story. The Audie Murphy Story is not a particularly great movie, but it is an amazing story.
It's rare when the stars play themselves that it ever works.
Yeah.
The Babe Ruth story is terrible with Babe Ruth.
Oh, yeah.
The Muhammad Ali, the greatest, that's terrible.
Terrible.
Even the most recently, that one 15, 17 to Paris or whatever, he used the actual guys who like attacked the terrorists.
Yeah.
Terrible movie.
I mean, there's a reason that actors are...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Occasionally there are people that are not actors that are good.
Howard Stern in Private Parts proves that point. But it's rare.
I have still a little memory of that movie. I remember actually surprisingly liking it.
I know, me too. Yeah. I liked it.
We're back at the theater. She's finishing doing stuff on the marquee, and up comes a car, and a German officer gets out and calls her by her name and says, get in the car.
Yeah.
And she kind of goes, what's all this about? And they say, get your ass in the car, and she does.
Yeah, man.
I think they slap her ass.
Yeah, he does. Too. He slaps her ass to get in there.
And now we show up at this dinner, and there is Joseph Goebbels.
Yeah.
Who is the head of, Nazi propaganda. And he's sitting with his French translator and talking about Jesse Owens and, that America was built on Negro sweat. And there's a title comes up that says, Dr. Joseph Goebbels, the number 2 man in Hitler's Third Reich, which I don't think he is the number 2 man.
I don't know who. Was it Goering?
I thought Goering was more. Okay. Well, Goering's the military.
Right.
Yeah, anyway. And they bring in.
Let's not quibble, Steve.
Yeah, let's not. They're all bad people. And in comes Shoshana, and there's Frederick there, and he wasn't sure that she would accept his invitation.
Yeah. So this is the first clue that something more nefarious is going on here, because he wasn't sure she would accept his invitation.
Yep.
So they send a harder-ass German, harder-ass Nazi.
No, agreed.
To get her to come.
Agreed.
And that's where you start to see there's cracks in Frederick's presentation of himself.
It's funny, as more gets revealed about him, he's a genuinely scary dude.
Yes.
You know, and then she gets introduced to Goebbels, who reaches out to shake her hand. The way he shakes her hand is like his fingers are, it's just really creepy, like wiggly fingers. It's very, very gross.
Like he's supposed to, which I like.
Introduces his French interpreter, and then we immediately cut to the shot of her getting fucked from behind by Goebbels.
Do you think, we got it. I don't know why he showed that scene. I get that
Tarantino likes this. That's a Tarantino thing.
Yeah.
You know, that's just kind of, it's really, I think part of my feeling is that and I feel this about Hateful Eight too, which I like a lot of parts about Hateful Eight, is that Tarantino has gotten so much praise and has so much power that there aren't people saying, that's brilliant, let's cut that down.
Yeah.
You know, let's bring that in.
Well, he doesn't have to.
I know.
People go to his movies.
Yeah. No, but I think his movies would be better if someone did.
Yeah. Julia Dreyfus plays the French interpreter. Julia Dreyfus, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, for those listening. She was in Kill Bill. She's the girl that gets her arms cut off in Kill Bill in the first part at the end there,
That's your favorite Tarantino, isn't it? Kill Bill?
Yeah, both of them combined. Not separated, combined. Yeah.
Yeah, Kill Bill to me is like, there are sequences that I think are absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like part 2 as much as part 1.
Okay.
And but I'm never not going to say that Tarantino's not a genius. I think he's a genius.
Is Pulp or Reservoir your favorite?
Reservoir, I think, is still my favorite.
Yeah.
I think because that movie is tight and just, it's so great beginning to end. And it's not, because this movie is self-indulgent, in my opinion.
Inglourious Basterds.
Inglourious Basterds.
Okay.
It just goes, there's times where it just goes on and on. And it's going on well, but it's like, we'll get to some of the ones that I think definitely could be cut down. We introduce a major from the Gestapo. And pulls out a chair. She sits down. They offer her champagne. And we get a little thing where Goebbels said, I can't even get to see my star. Like, everyone waits in line to meet me, but I have to wait in line to meet my star. Why is this? Like, I'm the guy who is the ear of the Fuhrer.
Right.
And now we get to this thing of there's a reason that they brought her here.
Yeah.
And the reason is that Frederick Zoller thinks that they should have the premiere in her movie theater.
Right.
Does he doing all of this just because he wants her?
Yes.
I think so too.
Absolutely. And also I think he's enlisted Goebbels to be his wingman in a way.
Essentially.
By saying like, everyone stands in line to meet me. I had to stand in line to meet him because of you. He's smitten with you, blah, blah, blah.
And it was supposed to be at the Ritz, and this place is smaller. It doesn't have as many luxury boxes. It doesn't have all the stuff that they would want. And then Zoller makes this big speech about, this is a good thing. It makes it more exclusive. People fighting to get seats. To hell with the French. This is a German night for Germans about you and me. And Goebbels kind of looks at him and is like going, man, I trained you too well.
Yeah.
I think, you're going to go into politics? I think I've created a monster. And they kind of go like, yeah, let's go see a private screening of a movie at the cinema. I have to go check it out.
Right.
And then just as they're talking about this, we hear, Landa, you're here.
Landa, da sind Sie ja.
And there's a music hit, and there's a reaction from her, and there is Christoph Waltz standing behind her. He looks down and kisses her hand.
Her eyes are just... This is some great acting throughout this whole scene from Melanie Laurent.
Yeah, I think she's great in this sequence. And then all of them, they have to leave. They have to go somewhere. And she wants to get up and go. And he goes, no, sit down. I want to talk to you. Because he wants to talk to her, but he's apparently in charge of security for the theater. And he wants to talk to her about the security. And what's so interesting, as they're leaving and having conversations about security and all this stuff, the camera just stays on her.
Yep.
Which I think is a brilliant, brilliant bit of direction.
Zoller questions Landa. Zoller says, she was already approved. What are you going to ask her about? And he says to him, that sounds suspiciously like an enlisted man questioning a colonel. And he's just like, oh, no, I just mean your reputation. I just want to know if your reputation procedures, one of the things, everything's like we should be worried about, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, it's fine. But like in that moment, once again, here's Zoller kind of feeling himself a little bit because of his status as a quote unquote war hero. Trying to throw his weight on a little bit, and Landa kind of cuts him off at the knees, and he has to like kind of backtrack. Yeah, it's an interesting moment.
So we're going to go into a scene that in some ways is very much like the first scene. We see the same kind of moves. He asks her about strudel. He wants to get can't have the strudel without the cream.
Without the cream. He orders milk for her. Which is when he orders milk for her, do you think he knows who she is?
I was literally that question. I was going to ask you the exact same question. So I've gone back and forth. Here's what I think.
Yeah.
I think the answer is yes.
Ooh.
But I have no idea why he's doing what he's doing.
Right.
Why is he what? Because in fact, so much of his behavior from this point forward in the film, I go, why is he doing this?
What kind of a get is it though to get her? Like now, there's no status to it, right? She's here. She has a theater. Blah blah blah. What would it mean? It's easy. He has her under his. He can get her anytime he wants.
Agreed.
She's in plain sight.
Yes.
So this is his way of messing with her. And so as this goes along and the cream and everything like this, when he gets the cigarette off through the cigarette, when he douses his cigarette, puts out his cigarette on the strudel, which is symbolic in my opinion, or foreshadowing of what's going to happen later. And then it says, I have another question to ask you, and then just stares at her with menace.
Right. And then doesn't ask anything.
To see if she breaks. Yeah. I think he's testing her to see if she breaks. And then goes, I forgot it. Oh, well, must not have been that important.
Incredible. Going back to the lioness playing with her prey.
Yeah.
Like, this is, he likes to, or the cat that likes to play.
Yeah.
Like, he likes to play. That's what turns him on some level. So he likes, if he could have just walked in the first scene and shot the Jews through the floor. And it would have been over. That's not fun for him.
Right.
So I think him seeing that she doesn't break makes him go, oh, this is fun. And it is weird. This scene mirrors that first scene in so many ways.
It does.
The smoking, the cream, the slow pace, the bunch of questions, the extremely quiet person you're talking to who's trying not to break. It's all really, really similar. And the cutting, some of the, like even just the cut to the strudel, cut to her
the cream,
fork, cream.
Yeah.
And all of those things, again, they build tension.
I love it.
Yeah.
And her reaction at the end of it when he walks away.
It's amazing.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's a really, really, really good moment.
Yeah.
We're back at the movie theater and we see the Germans. They look around at the lobby. They talk about things they're going to do to spruce it up. There's some argument about film that I don't even know what they're talking about. Lillian Harvey. I don't know who that is.
Don't say her name again.
Yeah. We also have heard, by the way, that she has a African or black projectionist who she says, well, he's a Frenchman.
Yeah.
And they do not want him being the projectionist.
This is in the scene between Landa and her that it comes up, yes.
Yeah.
And he says these kind of semi-derogatory things about him. Yeah.
And then all the Germans leave, and she's left with Marcel, the projectionist, and it's sort of like, what the fuck are we supposed to do?
Right.
And she says, it looks like we're going to have a Nazi premiere. To which he responds, what the fuck are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
And she wants to talk to him about that. He says, what? And she says, filling the cinema with Nazi and burning it to the ground.
Yeah.
And I think he knew that this was I think he already knew this is what she would want to do.
Marcel did.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we go and we talk about, well, we have all this nitrate film. It's hard to keep the place from burning to the ground anyway. I think we could do it ourselves on purpose if we wanted to.
Yeah.
And he calls, one of the things I find most interesting, he calls her Shoshana.
Yeah.
So he knows. And then we go back to Sam Jackson giving us a little important narration about the flammability of nitrate film.
At that time, 35 millimeter nitrate film was so flammable that you couldn't even bring a reel onto a streetcar.
Hey, you can't bring those there in a public vehicle. They're films, ain't they?
Yes.
Then they're flammable. Going off.
Because nitrate film burns 3 times faster than paper.
What movie does this make you think of?
Oh, I don't know. What were we thinking?
One of our earliest podcasts and one of your favorite films.
Okay.
Cinema Paradiso.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
not saying it makes you think of that, but that's immediately what it made me think of.
That's right. He gets blinded by the film, right?
Yeah. And we find out they have a huge collection of nitrate film, which is super, super flammable. And she basically says that if I'm going to burn it down, which I am, well, you're going to help me because you love me and I love you, and you're the only person on earth that I can trust.
Yeah.
But that's not, and then they go, well, that's not all they're going to do. And she asks about their filmmaking equipment and their sound equipment. And he says, oh no, it all works great. And why? Because Marcel, my sweet, we are going to make a film just for the Nazis.
Yeah.
So now we have a movie that is about where one of the bad guys is the star of a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie is going to be shown at a movie theater. And the weapon we're going to use to kill the Nazis is film.
Yeah.
And really using film as a weapon might be the ultimate Tarantino-esque plot device. I mean, we said before that this guy really isn't interested in real life. He's interested in film life. And his movies are really movies about movies. So, of course, film is the weapon we're going to use to kill the Nazis. And in part 2, our team of Nazi hunters is going to be joined by, of course, a film critic and a German movie star. As always, you can subscribe to the Cine-Files on iTunes, on YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, and a whole bunch of other places. Please leave reviews on iTunes. Leave your comments on YouTube. Visit us on our Facebook page. Just do a search for the Cine-Files. And you can support our show on patreon.com/the Cine-Files, where you can pick a movie or listen to our new Cine-Files shorts. I think up there right now is our discussion of Steven Spielberg's comments about whether or not streaming services should be eligible for Oscars. It's a great conversation, and the only way to hear it is to become a supporter on Patreon. And of course, if you want to buy Inglourious Basterds or any other movie we've ever reviewed, take a visit to our website, cinephiles.net, pick up the film, and come back next week for part 2 of Inglourious Basterds.